Story 1. Classroom Nightmare. It was a normal, dull day in calculus, but since it was Friday during 7th period, it meant the week was nearly over and spring break was just around the corner. Everyone was growing restless in their seats. I knew we wouldn't have a test that day, unlike many of my friends who had tests with their other teachers. So, in the middle of class, our relaxed teacher decided to play games with us on sporciale.com. He was always that laid back. While we were taking a brand logo quiz on Sporcle, I clearly remember the exact moment it happened, right after my friend answered a question, and I even recall the specific answer, Adidas. Suddenly, the dean's voice boomed over the loudspeaker, sounding panicked and frantic as he told all the teachers that this was not a drill and that they should initiate a lockdown. I felt chills and got goosebumps on my arms as our usually calm teacher also appeared frightened, rushing to turn off the lights and guiding us to the back corner of the room. We all sat in silence for about 2 minutes, and then the usual buzzing from a panel at the back of the room stopped, indicating that the school must have lost power. We exchanged worried looks, realizing that this was serious. After a few more minutes of waiting, we heard a man screaming at the top of his lungs coming down the hallway. 2 girls in the class began crying, which made all of us even more scared as the shouting grew nearer to the classroom. The crazed man started pounding on the lockers while yelling, "I'll kill all of you," and at that moment, I truly began to fear for my life. Our teacher shushed us as we all looked at each other to see how everyone was reacting. Then, the banging moved from the lockers to our classroom door, and that's when one of the crying girls screamed. No, the pounding on the door only intensified as the man started yelling, "Open up," and 2 of the girls in the class were crying out loud. It felt like an eternity as he pounded at the door, but eventually, he moved on down the hallway, still screaming like he was completely unhinged, until we could no longer hear him. I'd say it was about 10 minutes later, though it felt like half an hour given the situation, when the dean's voice returned over the loudspeaker to explain the situation, which was surprising for him to do. He explained that a seemingly unstable person had entered the building and assaulted the woman at the front desk, causing her to flee the building while screaming, and that the staff wasn't sure if the man was armed. This was before the school had cameras or could afford proper security, so the building was wide open to an incident like this. After the staff had swept through all the hallways and classrooms without finding him, the dean instructed the teachers to resume teaching but to keep all the doors locked and not allow any students to leave for any reason. The most unsettling part, however, was that one of the night shift janitors found the man sleeping in a storage closet near the back end of the school, and according to rumors spread by my peers, a .44 Magnum was sticking out of his pocket. It seems the janitor might have done something careless, like leaving the closet door open, to wake him up, because by the time a police officer could arrive, the man was gone. To this day, as far as I know, my entire class has no idea if this man was ever found, but I like to think that right now he's receiving the proper help he needs. Story 2. Lunch Lockdown. My school divides lunch into 2 sessions, the first is for all 6th graders along with some 7th graders, and the second is for the remaining 7th graders plus all 8th graders. The lockdown occurred at the beginning of October, and that day the sky was overcast and rainy. During the first lunch period, I heard 4 loud booms. At first, I thought it was thunder, but soon the entire lunch crowd began screaming. I figured those kids were just being overly dramatic, but then campus security arrived and started shouting for everyone to go into the multipurpose room. The students waiting in line to buy lunch had to discard their meals and come inside. My friends and I, along with a large group of other kids, hurried into the room. Everyone was curious about what was going on. Our multipurpose room is very spacious, and its back wall is made of transparent glass. When we were rushed in, campus security was covering the glass with curtains, and there were adults stationed at every exit. My friend Eric, along with the rest of us, was curious, so he asked one of the adults what was happening. When he returned, he explained, "You know those houses right in front of TMS?" I replied, "Yes, there's that mentally disabled, unstable man who barricaded himself in front of his house, and he's threatening to kill himself and the cops if he gets evicted. He was wandering outside the school, watching the kids in a strange way. Tyler told us that it turned out the man was also a registered sex offender, which made the situation even worse. We ended up stuck in the multi-purpose room for an entire hour, which took up 2 class periods. Once everything was settled, we were escorted back to our classrooms one by one. Later, I learned that the man lives next door to my friend Ashley, who had told me about the previous Halloween when she saw him at his window, cutting his arm and writing, "Don't come here or I'll kill you," in his own blood. Of course, since it was Halloween, people, including Ashley, thought it was just a holiday prank. But after this terrifying incident, we all knew that this man was truly unstable, and we were relieved he never came near us. Story 3. Basement Terror. I'm 22, freshly graduated from college, and I recently landed a job at my old high school as a computer intern in the basement. The basement is a cluttered, disorganized space, but there's a small 3-person office that is surprisingly nice down there. It has 3 spacious desks, 2 mini fridges, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, and wonderfully satisfying air conditioning, a luxury neither students nor teachers enjoy, along with all the school servers and other technical equipment. I secured the job because 3 of my former computer teachers genuinely adored me. I even consider them real friends rather than just mentors, and they all played a huge role in helping me get this position. Everything had been going great until a few weeks ago when my 2 co-workers, Dan and Gary, who share the office with me, weren't there because they were upstairs working on papers or something else. I was eating my sandwich during lunch break when I received a phone call from a woman in the front office informing me that the school was on lockdown and that someone possibly armed had entered the building. I had little choice but to turn off the lights, because, despite how nice this little office was, it didn't have an actual door, just a large opening, and the door to the entire basement didn't even have a working lock to keep me safe. So, I switched off all the lights in the office and on my computer screen, leaving my phone on the desk as I texted both Greg and Dave, but neither of them responded. I sat there in the dark, playing games on my phone for about 20 minutes while waiting for instructions from up front to resume work. I had no idea what was happening since I couldn't hear anything from upstairs, and I wasn't allowed to make any calls until the lockdown was lifted. Then, the noisy basement door creaked open, its sound echoing throughout the basement and into my office. I sat up, wondering if I should call out for Greg or Dan because I was eager to get some information from them. Soon after, someone came running down the stairs, their footsteps approaching my office. I pushed my chair away and crawled under my desk as someone entered the office without turning on the lights, leaving only silence behind. I can hardly explain the fear I was feeling. I was convinced that if I made a sudden noise, I'd be a dead man. Suddenly, my phone dinged with a text message, and in that moment, I felt as if my entire world shriveled up in fear. I clenched my teeth as the footsteps moved closer, until I finally dove out from under the desk, pleading desperately with whoever it was not to kill me. Just then, someone grabbed my arm and pulled me up. It turned out to be a man wearing a red plaid button-up, jeans, and a reddish-black cap. He reassured me by saying, "It's okay, I'm just hiding down here with you." I whispered, "What's going on up there?" but he kind of ignored my question and instead asked if there was an exit down here. I replied, "Yes, around that way." Before he could do anything further, I asked him, "Who are you?" After a brief moment of silence, he began explaining that he was on his way to pick up his son when a teacher told him to hide. After his explanation, I checked my phone and saw a text from Dan that read, "Dude, this is, ___, crazy, some guy with a gun shot Mr. Thompson. He's wearing a red shirt and hat, whatever you do, don't come upstairs." I was about to read that text aloud to the man, but when I looked up, I felt my stomach sink, and the man seemed to catch on to my suspicious stare. Panicking, all I could think of was to run upstairs. Then a gunshot echoed through the basement, and I heard the bullet ricochet off something metal in the darkness. Thank God, the bullet missed me, and I managed to get upstairs. Fortunately, police were waiting at every exit, including the basement door, and they caught the man the moment he opened it. Even better, our teacher Mr. Johnson survived the gunshot. it was later determined that the man and Mr. Johnson had some kind of conflict for reasons that were never revealed. All we know is that Mr. Johnson hadn't done anything to warrant such a reaction, and the sound of that gunshot will echo in my mind forever.